Before we begin, thank you very much to JM Autobot for joining the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. As always, thank you very much for allowing me to continue, and thank you for getting me so close to so many of my goals. I know the Beast Wars reviews have been on a very bad schedule. We'll get back to them, and don't worry, like, no matter what the level is at, no matter whether you can continue or not, all those will be made. I will finish that series. That's not an issue, so you'll get it made. Thank you for your patience. But let's focus on today's video, because I've been thinking about this topic for a little bit now, so time to actually tackle it. There is a realm of toys that Transformers has traditionally not really embraced the way that it's capable of embracing, and that is the roleplay sector of toys. Now, we acknowledge that, I'm a tokusatsu fan. I like my Super Sentai and my Kamen Rider. In Japan, those toy lines thrive off of their roleplay experiences. It's a much bigger thing over there and in other countries than it is here in America, where the action figure is king. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for it. Of course, Power Ranger toys here in America absolutely proves that kids want to have the things their heroes have on screen. So why hasn't never really worked for Transformers? Though they started it really in Energon, or in Armada, but it really took a focus in Energon, where they genuinely had role-play things. The Energon blaster that you see on screen right now, of course, it's like 1-to-1 scale with how big it was in the show. The Energon saber was an actual large saber that you could swing around, and that looked exactly like it did in the show. So they actually tried. They tried, and they actually did a decent job of trying for it. However, in years after that, it seems like the efforts they made were passable at best, or so over the top I don't think many could afford it. So we look at things like the movie lines, where pretty much every iteration of Optimus Prime's swords actually did get toys. There were plenty of them. They were never really part of the toy line itself. It always felt like this side thing that most stores didn't even carry. The sword you're seeing here, I don't even remember seeing in a shop. And I know it exists. I own one somewhere. But weirdly enough, it just never felt like it was part of the toy line itself. It just kind of felt like this extra thing Hasbro offered up, and most weren't interested, some were. So yeah, I think that's kind of where a lot of the roleplay stuff falls these days. Now, occasionally you do get some big deal ones. This Bumblebee blaster, for instance, from the Bumblebee movie, this is actually pretty solid. This was actually pretty involved. You've got a disc blaster, you've got sound effects, you've got the blade that pops out. There's a lot going on to something like this, and I think Bumblebee blasters are pretty much the go-to for a big roleplay toy now. But most of what you see these days is just masks, and Hasbro got on this idea of mask toys years back with Marvel, and it's kind of extended into the Transformer brand from there. And you know what? It's not it's absolutely the kids thing, right? Of course. We don't even see full helmets anymore like we used to with the 2007 movie. We're getting these instead. We have to go to higher end toy lines in order to get full-size helmets, which they are doing right now as a collector's thing. But again, it exists somewhere on the side of the main line. This, okay, it's cheap, but at least it actually has the packaging to match the current toy line. My favorite ones were from Animated. This thing was cool. So it's a full-size Optimus Prime, and guess what? This is the only way you could get a full-size looking Optimus Prime with the rear section of his fire truck mode and everything. The thing that they were supposed to use later on for, and the thing that never quite manifested as a transforming toy itself. But you would put your hand inside, grab onto a handle, and flip the entire thing over, and the entire thing would wrap around inside out around your forearm and turn into Optimus Prime's forearm and hand holding a blaster. It was a super cool trick. I do think it made it maybe a little bit too unapproachable for most. I think it ended up being a little more expensive than I think a roleplay toy really should have ended up being. I mean, it just sounds silly compared to what I'm about to suggest for roleplay toys. But this was super cool. And what bugs me is that they were going to do one for Megatron, which would have been the first time we got like an actual fusion cannon roleplay toy for Megatron. And it got canceled. Ugh. Oh my god, I hate that. I hate it. It looked so good. But this is stuff we actually got. This video is supposed to be about the hypotheticals, because there's a whole myriad of things I could suggest for Transformer roleplay toys that should have existed by now, but really don't. How about the Ion Blaster? Optimus Prime's signature rifle. Now, this was so signature in the original cartoon that it has a sound effect when it fires that no one else had. Like Megatron, like everyone else, like all the Decepticons had their generic laser fires. Autobots had their generic laser fires. The fusion cannon was special. The Ion Blaster was special. And you'd think that Optimus Prime's signature sidearm would actually be really good pickings for some electronic toy with some blast effects and some quotes, some lights. Look at the rear section. Look at the rear section of this gun. Tell me that just doesn't look like the perfect spot to hide a speaker. Like it just is. Now, there was an attempt. A third-party company tried to run a Kickstarter for a full-size G1 Prime Ion Blaster. Now, and I've taken this off of TFW so you can see the stats on it. 39 inches long, 5 inches thick, 13 inches tall. We don't know how much this would have weighed, but the fact that it has more than 70 spots that light up and a sound box and how big this would have been heavy. This would have been heavy. I say would have been because this was a Kickstarter in 2018, and I think it only made like $6,000 out of like some triple digit goal. Like it failed massively. It failed massively, which is really unfortunate. In this case, I think they were trying to do too much at once because the electronics seem incredibly excessive. And I don't think it was really marketed that well. I don't remember anyone talking about it or sharing it around. You know, it's weird that way. So maybe not. Maybe the market doesn't exist for something like this. I would get one. I would be happy to have one. How about the Matrix of Leadership? Now, this has had statues in the past, but we're talking about role-play toys. We're talking about a piece of plastic that will do the thing that it does on screen. So why, this is literally the most iconic MacGuffin in all of Transformers. One of the most iconic items that, Transformers has always obsessed over and brought back in many, many forms. Why is there no version that I can fit my fingers into the handles and actually pull it apart? Because it's tricky to engineer it, but it can do that. You can make it light up when you pull it. You can make it play the touch. You close it back up. Maybe there's buttons on the inside of the handles that you hit with your fingers, and when it does that, that's when it cues up the lights. It's not a hard thing to engineer, but the fact that Hasbro's never made one themselves, it's always been licensed out to a statue maker that makes it light up, but that's about it. And it's not even this one. The Matrix of Leadership from the movie as well. Pretty much every Matrix of Leadership has this potential. Now, this product does actually exist. You are looking at a movie-accurate prop, life-size and everything. It's made of metal. And this was a high-end collectible replica. And that's fine, but it's not a toy, is it? It's not something that I can hit a button on and hear Optimus Prime quotes. It's not something that lights up when I'm holding it. It's just a big piece of shrapnel that is shaped like the Matrix of Leadership from the movie. Replica, not toy, right? Right. So, again, it feels weird that something like this doesn't exist. What else doesn't exist? I've spoken about this before, and I am a huge proponent of doing something that is a life-size transformer. Like, and in my head, it is a laser beak. A laser beak. Like, because you look at like the engineering level we've gotten to on how to transform a laser beak. We went from that little, like, oddly shaped cassette that you had to plug the guns on in G1 to the masterpiece level laser beak, which not only includes his thrusters and guns as part of the tape's actual transformation, it's still small enough to fit inside the original Soundwave. That's a huge leap in engineering. I think it's one of the best examples of how far Transformer engineering has come since the original toy line. So, in my head, I've always wanted this full-size Laserbeak that I can like perch on my desk, transform it if I want to, but like it's just sitting there the way it would be for Megatron. I'm not getting like ambitious about like, oh, it should mount on my arm like it does for Megatron and Soundwave. The balancing act for that and the joint tolerance would be pretty extreme. I'd be happy with one that just sits on my desk. I tap a little button and it makes little Frank Welker, screeching noises. That'd be fine for me. Or little Soundwave quotes too. That would be perfect. And I know there is a 3D print for a Laserbeak that I could make full size. I've tried printing it. It didn't turn out for me. And also, it does its own transformation, which is like super simple. So it doesn't really replicate the original toy as much as it kind of just does its own thing. So I would, at the very least, I would want one that replicates the original toy, right? So Laserbeak, actually any of the cassettes, frankly, if I'm going to be honest here. Oh my god. So when Armada announced that they were doing roleplay toys, I actually got excited. I actually got really interested in what they were going to do. What they ended up doing was Laserbeak, who, hey, we've talked about that toy, and the two sabers, the Star Saber and the Dark Saber, which technically should have come in this list before the Energon ones, but it was one mold that barely did anything, and it really wasn't indicative of the one in the show. So it's not the strongest of efforts. When they talked about role-playing toys for Armada, what was in my head was, well, what's the one thing the characters do that would be kind of cool to do in real life? Well, that is plugging minicons on, right? So in my head, I was picturing like an arm brace, something I could hold in my hand like this and strap on to my forearm and plug minicons onto, right? Like deluxe-sized minicon toys that were like 1-to-1 scale with me, and I could just plug them onto the forearm and it would unlock some kind of electronic effect in the minicon. It might light up, it might make sound effects, or it might unlock some kind of spring-loaded feature, a grappling hook, a firing dart, depending on whatever the vehicle mode is. That's kind of what I had in mind as far as, a role-play toy. And keep in mind, like, this was before I got into Kamen Rider and realized that Japan does role-play toys like that all the time, So, like, even then, my head was in that space where, like, that's the kind of play pattern that I would really think would be really super cool. And Kamen Rider toys do prove that play patterns like that are completely possible and doable. It might have been a little bit more expensive because we're talking about a deluxe that would have had electronics in it, but that is what Laserbeak was, and I think Laserbeak should have been basically an outlier in a size class that would have been just that. Large, articulated minicons that I could plug on, play a noise. That's what I was picturing, and I'm still upset that that's not what I got. Now, that's my own fault for hyping myself up over something that wasn't going to exist. But you know what? I think it would have been fun. And as long as we're talking about some of those iconic weapons, you could turn just about any of those iconic weapons into something that you can swing around and use. Just to get it out of the way, no fusion cannon for Megatron. Have you ever held like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Disk and you know how heavy that thing weighs after you've been playing for like 10, 15 minutes of a duel? Something like that, except it's going to be twice the size and extremely awkward in its weight. I don't think this would be a fun roleplay toy, and I don't think it would be cheap either, considering how big the molds would have to be. Yeah, now, if you want to give me more, like, iconic weaponry, how about just, like, Optimus Prime axes and maybe his flail, if you can figure out the engineering? Just, like, make swinging noises when I hold it, you know, that kind of thing. Again, I didn't even prepare a slide for that, and that's just something that's just, like, like I said, there's just a ton of things that this could be. How many times have we seen an Allspark without seeing one on a toy shelf? Now, to be fair, there's plenty of replicas of the '07 movie Allspark. There is one that actually does make sound effects. It's a USB hub, though. It's not a toy. You know, something that lit up and played noises when I hit a little secret button. You know, that would have been super simple to make in 2007. It's a plastic box that has been painted, and then you just hit this little secret button and it plays Optimus Prime quotes. It plays Megatron quotes. It makes all like the coming, like bringing Transformer to life sound effects. Simple stuff. Doesn't exist. Didn't happen in animated, didn't happen in Prime, didn't happen in Cyberverse, didn't happen in any of these series where the Allspark has some kind of importance. So it's just weird. It's just weird to me that, like, because when you put so much importance on one single object in a show, that makes it even more desirable to actually have one of your own that functions and you can actually play with. So the fact that it doesn't exist is super weird to me. Like, it seems like you market something to be so desirable and then don't give me an outlet for that desire, right? And especially for a kid, seeing all, like, how important and cool something is, why wouldn't you want it? Why wouldn't you want Sari's key to just, like, make all those sound effects if you're watching animated at home? Things like that. And while we're on the subject, yes, there are Transformers who are roleplay toys themselves, and I would be completely in favor of those things existing. How about a Perceptor that works as, like, an actual microscope, not just, like, oh, well, it kind of works, the lenses are real and all that. No. Like, actually has the light, actually has glass lenses, actually, maybe it doesn't transform, but it actually works as, like, a toy microscope, because, admittedly, wouldn't be the most popular thing, but it exists. You want a popular one? How about a Shockwave that actually fires darts, How about that? I would say Megatron, but we know the whole thing about toys, realistic gun toys and all the compromises they have to make. And to be fair, Shockwave would go through that exact same thing. But being bright purple to start with, and the fact that we've already seen Shockwave with orange parts to him, the Action Master, the one that came with the Combiner War Bruticus, it does lend itself to adding some orange to him for that orange barrel that is required for a toy like this. Also, I think his body shape would work a little bit better as a Nerf gun. I think it has a little bit more room for the engineering. So, this is the last thing that came to my mind. Like, why doesn't this exist? I would absolutely buy a Shockwave that fires off little purple energon darts. But, you know what? This is just a brief list. I could go on between Transformers who turn into roleplay things, between all the MacGuffins and weapons that Transformers have held in their hand even once. But I'm going to leave it at this because I think these are my favorite ideas that exist. Leave a few for me in the comments below. I'm obviously not thinking of everything. But thank you for joining me for another rendition of this YouTube channel's random topics of the day. Hope you enjoyed. Hope it fired you up and gave you some points to think about. It's not always about a piece of transforming plastic that we want for Transformers. Sometimes there's a few things out of the box that I would like to see too. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.